Welcome to this video. We're going to be doing another LeetCode problem today, and I picked number 1052. That's called Grumpy Bookstore Owner. It's a medium problem. It's going to be about arrays and more specifically sliding windows. So let's look here at the description. It says that we have a bookstore owner that has a store open for n minutes. You're given an integer array customers of length n, where customers of I is the number of the customers that enter the store at the start of the ith minute, and all those customers leave after the end of that minute. So we're going to be given here a array customers, and it's going to have a bunch of integers in it, and it represents how many customers are going in the store and leaving at each minute. So each customer goes in and then leaves on the same minute, and we have then the array customers. And it says that during certain minutes the bookstore owner is grumpy. You're given a binary array grumpy, where grumpy of I is 1 if he is grumpy during the ith minute, and 0 if he's not grumpy. So we're given a second array called grumpy, and it says that the bookstore owner it's going to be grumpy if the element at each index is 1, and he's not grumpy if it's 0. So it's a binary array, and it says that for every minute, if the bookstore is grumpy at that minute, that element is going to be 1. If he's not grumpy, then it's going to be 0. And it says here that if the bookstore owner is grumpy, the customer entering during that minute are not satisfied. Otherwise, they're satisfied. And the bookstore owner knows a secret technique to remain not grumpy for minutes. That's the integer we're given. And yeah, this technique can only be used once. So we're gonna be given here a minutes, which we can choose, where to place this sub window so that the maximum number of customers can be satisfied throughout the day. And we need to return that. So here, return the maximum number of customers that can be satisfied throughout the day. So pretty much we have a array customers. Each element is going to be a minute. We also have an array grumpy, where each element is also a minute. And we are given here this minutes, which the store owner has this power of not being grumpy for that amount of minutes, and we need to allocate the best possible minutes of our array so that we maximize the number of satisfied customers. So let's look here at some examples. We have here, for example, this array for customers. So this means that on the first minute, one customer comes in and leaves. On the second minute, no customers arrive, and therefore no one leaves, and so on, right? So here on the third minute we have one coming in and one leaving, and it goes all the way. Here, for example, we have 7 customers going in and 7 leaving. And at the same time we have this other array called grumpy. It's going to have the same length as our customers, and it corresponds, each index here is the minute, and if it's 0, it means that at that minute the store owner is not grumpy. If it's 1, he is grumpy. We're given here minutes equals 3. So for this example here, the bookstore owner, he has the power of not being grumpy for 3 minutes, which means that for 3 of these consecutive minutes here, we can make the book owner not grumpy, which means we can convert everything to 0 for a sub window here of length 3, right? So it's asking us, where should we make the bookstore owner not grumpy so that we can maximize the number of satisfied customers. So for example here, it says that we should pick the last 3 minutes. If we pick these 3 last minutes here for the bookstore owner not to be grumpy, so that would be equivalent of making all these numbers here 0. So it's going to be 0, 0, 0 here, which is going to effectively, make all these 5 customers here happy, plus this one here happy. The 7 one doesn't matter because he wasn't grumpy here in the first place. It was a 0. So by making these last 3 minutes not grumpy, it means we're adding 6 to our total of satisfied customers, 5 plus 1 over here. So that's a sliding window problem where we have a window of minutes, right? And we need to see where can we place those minutes so that we can maximize the number of satisfied customers. So to solve this problem here, I thought of a solution where we first, we calculate how many total satisfied customers we have, how many satisfied customers in total we have. and then we're gonna be having then this sliding window of length minutes, and for every window we're gonna be seeing, you know, how many customers are not satisfied. And our goal is to find the window where there's the most number of non-satisfied customers. Because if we then find the window where there's the biggest number of unsatisfied customers, we can make sure that the bookstore owner is not grumpy during that time, which is gonna maximize, you know, how many customers we can add to our already satisfied ones. So to solve that problem, then we're gonna be sliding this window through our array and looking for the sub window where we have the most unsatisfied customers. And so for that, you know, usually here we're gonna start by getting n, which is the length of our array. It doesn't matter which one because they're both have the same number. And as I said, no, we first need to find the total number of satisfied customers without using any powers. You know, if he wasn't to use any of these powers, know how many satisfied customers would have. So let's initialize that to 0 here. And now we're gonna need a window sum, I'm gonna call it. That's gonna hold how many unsatisfied customers we have at a specific window that we're gonna be sliding through the array. Initialize that to 0 as well. And we need to keep track of the biggest one we have seen so far. So let me call this biggest window sum, also set it to 0. That's gonna be holding the biggest sum that we've seen so far in the current window. And because this is a sliding window problem, we have always a left pointer and a right pointer that will keep track of our window. So let's start here, left equals 0. And the right pointer, usually I do it like this, where we're gonna be using a for loop to increment our right pointer. So we're gonna be sliding through the window. So let's start, you know, at index 0, go all the way to the end. So for right in range n. And now, you know, the first thing we need to do is to find this number of satisfied customers. And how do we find a satisfied customer? So right now we're pointing at 0, at index 0. So we can simply add, you know, satisfied customers plus or equal customers at that index, right? However, we can only add this if our bookstore owner is not grumpy, right? So we need to make sure that he's not grumpy at that specific index. Right, so that's gonna be incrementing the number of satisfied customers. Simply adding the number of customers at that minute if the bookstore owner is not grumpy. Okay, that's gonna be useful for us later. Now we need to make sure that we are keeping track of the sum of our windows, right? So we're gonna be adding here window sum. We're gonna be adding the number of unsatisfied customers, right? When do we have unsatisfied customers? We have unsatisfied customers when our bookstore owner is grumpy. So we can add here customers right times grumpy right. And why is that? Because grumpy is a binary array, so it's only going to be 1 and 0. So if he is grumpy, you know, that's going to be 1. So we simply add the amount of customers on that minute. If he's not grumpy, this is 0. So this is going to be adding 0, which does nothing, right? So it's only adding unsatisfied customers, the customers that are there when the bookstore owner is grumpy. So that's gonna be our sum of our window that we're gonna be sliding through the array, but we also need to keep track of the biggest one we have seen so far. And so for that, we're gonna be using this variable that we defined earlier, biggest window sum. And we're just gonna keep track of the biggest one we've seen. So that's gonna be max of what's currently the value and the current window sum, right? So just keeping track of the biggest one we've seen. Okay. Now, the window has a limited size, right? So it can only be minutes long. So we need to make sure that this window doesn't grow infinitely. We need to make sure it's bounded. And for that, we're gonna be looking at the right index and the left one, and that's a standard way of you to find the length of a sub window, right minus left plus 1. So that's just the length of our current window. If that's going to be equal to minutes, which is our boundary, we cannot let it grow any further. So we need to make sure we're moving the left pointer, right? But before I move the left pointer, we need to decrease the window sum at the left pointer. So that's going to make sure that our window sum really only holds the number of dissatisfied customers at that window. So we're going to be doing here window sum minus equals to customers left times grumpy left, and that's the same logic as this line over here. So we want to just decrease the amount of dissatisfied customers, which is going to be how many customers at that minute times whether the bookstore owner is grumpy or not, right? And after we subtract that, we simply increment our left pointer by 1. So we're going to be pretty much sliding our window all the way through the end of the array. And by the end of this process, we're going to have a number of satisfied customers without using any powers, right? And we're going to have here the biggest window sum. That's going to be the biggest window we found where there's the most amount of unsatisfied customers. And after that process here, we can simply now return the satisfied customers here, satisfied customers plus biggest window sum. Why is that? Because satisfied customers, that's the amount of customers that were satisfied without using any powers. And this biggest window sum here that we found, that's how many customers, the biggest amount of customers that were not satisfied because he was grumpy. But now, because of his power, we can change this to also be satisfied. So that's why we're adding this to the already satisfied customers without him using any powers. So let's now see if this here works. Let me submit this. And you see here, it's accepted. And yeah, pretty much everyone had one big peak here for the solutions. Let's, if you keep pressing submit, sometimes it changes how many we beat. So now it's 40%. It depends a lot on how many times you submitted. But anyways, that's my solution. And here you see the complexity. We get O of n, right? Because we're only really going through that array once and then calculating all of these things dynamically here. That's pretty much all I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and I see you next time.